You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Welcome to CPhT Connect, the only weekly podcast specifically for pharmacy technicians. Join us as we dive into the hot topics, tough conversations, and industry trends affecting pharmacy technicians. In each episode, we connect you with industry leaders who want to help you expand your patient care, pharmacy practice, and professional advancement. Now, here's your host, Mike Johnston, CPhT.
Welcome to CPhT Connect. I'm your host, Mike Johnston, and joining me today is my fabulous co-host, Miss Ashleigh Smith. Ashleigh, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. We had a nice little 3-day weekend with Veterans Day, so that was nice, but it feels good to be back.
Well, we have got a special episode today in conjunction with our partners at Drug Topics and the Pharmacy Podcast Network, where we're going to do a recap of
CPhT Live, our flagship event that we have here at NPTA for pharmacy technicians.
That's right. And our theme this year was Level Up. And boy, did this year's event deliver on that theme. For those of you that weren't able to attend, we figured we'd provide like a quick recap of all the CE sessions and share some clips and some of our aha moments. And if you hang around to the end, I'm actually going to share how you can join me live for a free encore session of the keynote I presented.
All right, well, let's get into it with our first highlight from CPhT Live. It's going to be from Dr. LaKoya Johnston, and her session was Safe Staff, Safe Patients, Why Working Conditions Matter. Dr. LaKoya brought such a powerful message with her presentation, and it really was just about the working conditions and how they directly affect patient safety. Her approach was honest. It was refreshing. I really liked how she emphasized safety goes beyond just the protocols. It's really about the culture you build within your team, within your pharmacy, and where everyone just understands that there are real life consequences for their actions. Let's take a listen.
I had that conversation. If you don't put your decimal point in the right place, what could happen? And I've said it so many times that now all I have to say is what could happen. They say we could kill somebody. So those are the conversations that I have on a regular basis with my technicians, because I want them to understand patient safety comes first, but also the work environment that you're walking into may not be ideal. Everybody's not going to be happy. It's not going to be a walk in the park. We're not skipping through a bed of roses every day.
Yeah, I think everyone knows Dr. LaKoya she's one of my favorites. I mean, she closed out the conference in 23. We had her open it up this year. What I love about her is her ability to just like cut through the noise and give real talk about the really important issues. And this topic, patient safety and working conditions, it can get a little controversial depending on where it's being presented. So I thought she did a fantastic job.
She did, and I love her perspective. Mm-hmm. She always gives, like you said, a very real perspective of what's it like to work in a pharmacy. And a lot of times we are not aware of how the condition or environment we're working in does directly affect the way the patients are treated, mistakes being made, even being reported, those type of things. It's all connected. And she really talks about how the culture of the pharmacy really affects that. She really gave a great point, how she was saying, like, now they just think what happens when you make a mistake? A patient could die. And that sounds very extreme, but that's the reality. Like, that's very true. So I always love how she kind of just pulls things together and helps us to see things from a different angle.
Absolutely. Well, up next, we had a fantastic session from Reggie Gilliard titled Navigating the Regulatory Landscape for Pharmacy Technicians. It was a must-listen session, especially for anyone that's, ever found themselves overwhelmed or frustrated with the complexities of pharmacy regulations. And a lot like Dr. Lakoya, Reggie, cut through all the noise and really delivered straight talk to the attendees. Everybody loved his job, just kind of breaking down how the decisions made by boards of pharmacy actually directly impact our profession while keeping patient safety as the top priority. Let's take a listen.
Pharmacy is not directed to protect the profession. They're not directed to promote the profession necessarily, but the rules and regulations that they do make and that they create or enforce are things that affect the profession and affect you as technicians in the profession as well. So while everything that the Board of Pharmacy does may have an impact on the profession, everything has to be directed for the health and safety of the people.
I could listen to him talk forever. I want him to read me bedtime stories. I love listening to him present. And I feel like with this topic, you really do need to have someone that can really break these things down. One thing he was kept emphasizing that stood out to me was he was talking about pharmacy technicians taking the initiative to get on those boards and what it really takes as far as reaching out to these different organizations, reaching out to the board and just being persistent. I thought that was just a really great takeaway as far as with the technicians is in taking that initiative. And I thought that was really great.
I think his perspective is so unique, right? Because he's been an executive on a state board of pharmacy in the regulatory side, as well as, being in leadership roles on the association side. And the point he was making there in that clip is really critical to keep in mind. The state boards of pharmacy, their duty, their job is to the public. It's not to the profession. They're not here to be our advocates or anything like that. Now, there's a lot of places where those two roles can overlap, right? Where patient safety and professional, development and changes can line up there. But I thought it was great to have someone from his experience, just really kind of lay everything out for the audience.
I agree. So with our next highlight, we have a session that really hit home for a lot of the attendees. It was Building Career Ladders, Elevating the Pharmacy Tech Role, where you and I moderated the panel discussion with Daniel Kais and Jamie Collette. This session focused on developing clear career pathways for pharmacy technicians, which is something we know can be a game changer for both retention and also for job satisfaction. Jamie and Daniel shared some incredible insights from their own personal careers. And then they also talked about career ladders, how they can inspire growth and can create a stronger, more motivated team. Let's hear a clip from Jamie first.
So it does it really pushes people. And I think even our employees push each other. They see what advantages are offered when they've achieved a higher tier. And also they're excited about the new opportunities that they can actually participate in. So it's not just an individual trying to motivate themselves to do it. It's other staff members that see, here, this is where you can truly advance and take advantage of this. And it is a great opportunity.
And then we have another clip from Daniel.
Because retention, again, is going to make twinkles light up in any HR person's eyes, and directors and trainers. Sitting as a trainer, I'd rather train and do ongoing training with the 10 same techs than to have to keep same training 55 techs that are cycling through just because they needed the job. So again, it's all about seeing the benefit of it for both sides.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite sessions from the whole conference. First of all, I love the panel discussion format where it's more of a conversation, less of a presentation. And I felt like we were able to have a really valuable conversation with them, and get their insights. These are two individuals with tremendous experience and insights because they've both been actively involved in developing career ladders doors and career lattices for pharmacy technicians. And, we got to talk about what works and what doesn't work and what the motivations are. This was definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, I really like this one too. I always love a panel because we get to, just really talk and discuss and interact with everyone in their comments. I think this one really stood out to everyone because it was kind of self-reflecting on, people's, I guess, their settings and careers, and kind of like, well, does my job offer this for me? Or, something that you should really look for in a job. And then also, if your job does offer something like that, like a career ladder, how does that work for me? How do I need to, get on that track? And they really went into detail about the benefits of that. Like we talked about, like the benefits of that career ladder, and then also the cons of that, which honestly, I didn't see too many cons, right. But I'm like, that sounds great. But I think that is something that techs should be aware of someday when it comes to picking their career or like a job where they want to work. And next up, we have our session that's becoming more relevant every year as the landscape of healthcare evolves, and that is Understanding Cannabis, Essentials on CBD and Medical Marijuana. And this was presented by Dr. Joseph Friedman. This session was packed with a lot of critical information about the role of pharmacy technicians in this field of medical cannabis. He really made the case for why our expertise is needed more than ever in this space.
Cannabis is a real drug with real side effects, and it deserves the same close attention that every other legitimate drug requires. An initial reaction to the consumption of cannabis can lead to an increase in heart rate and a decrease in blood pressure. New patients should be made aware of this. That's exactly the kind of information licensed pharmacists and pharmacy technicians are ideally trained and experienced to provide, and that's why we are the ideal professionals to dispense medical cannabis. We are the drug experts. We have all the skills. We know how to ask questions. We know how to talk to other healthcare professionals. We know about drug interactions, difficult suppliers, and so forth. But we have a huge problem. Cannabis is illegal. According to the Federal Controlled Substance Act, it's a Schedule I drug.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about that just because they're actively, looking right now at rescheduling cannabis. But this was certainly one of our more popular sessions. And Dr. Friedman is an expert in this area. He is really one of the pioneers when it comes to exploring, pharmacy dispensed cannabis. And so we were really delighted to have him deliver this session this year.
I love how he was saying that when it comes to the medical marijuana and how that's becoming it's evolving more. I'll say that he was saying how new patients aren't really, aware of all of the information that's out there. They're not aware of all of the side effects and things, and how it really should be treated like a normal drug where you would go in and you would be counseled on these things and you're told, about all the side effects, all of the things that you should be looking for, and how pharmacists and techs are the professionals, like who would know more than us. So I just think that presentation was kind of more creeping into like the future of pharmacy. Mm. And it really gives techs, an eye-opening view of more possibilities for them, even within that field.
And so this year's conference was really unique because you and I were co-hosting. So the day and time that you were hosting and moderating that session, I was actually in the separate track with Dr. Corey Jinks for his presentation titled Problem Solved, Critical Thinking Skills for Pharmacy. And it was a lot of fun. It was a super thought-provoking session. Obviously, Corey's background in improv really shines through when he, talks on these topics and shares different unique strategies for just tackling the everyday challenges that we face in pharmacy. He had us all laughing a lot, thinking about how we could, maybe approach problem solving a little differently. Let's take a listen.
Cognitive dissonance. So it's very uncomfortable when we have conflicting ideas, leading to avoidance of critical thought. So this is what I call watching people's brains break. So this was sort of a thing that I learned, like a growth mindset of like, okay, I learned that this way didn't do it, telling them didn't do it. I'll literally put a physical barrier in the way. So One little example. I also put my wallet and keys in the fridge when I want to remember to bring a food to somewhere, or any of the above. We can learn these skills. So are critical, like to think critically. We have to be willing to kind of have our brains broke.
Yeah. So the chat was going pretty crazy with the leaving the keys and wallet in the fridge.
That's hilarious. I was literally about to say that maybe I need to start leaving my keys in the fridge, because I always forget, like before going somewhere, I always want to bring like water and stuff like that. Maybe I need to start leaving my keys so I can remember. It sounds crazy, but it just might work.
Yeah, no, it was a ton of fun. He gave us so many different unique, ideas and strategies on kind of how to approach critical thinking from a different perspective. So it was a lot of fun.
That is hilarious. So then we had a session titled When Disaster Strikes, Emergency Preparedness and Response. And this was by Heatherlyn Gray. Heatherlyn did a very, very, very good job at highlighting the critical role of pharmacy technicians play in emergency situations, especially when it comes to communication and coordination with healthcare teams. Let's take a listen.
That's where we as pharmacy professionals are working with our healthcare coalitions, our local public health agencies, response teams. That's where understanding those different frameworks and how we talk in emergency management helps. And then pharmacy techs as a communication bridge. Again, this kind of just goes back to how we sit in the middle of a lot of things and focus a lot of coordination and communication that I'm going to say might not be appreciated all the time, but during a disaster, probably would be very much appreciated. So being able to relay that information on drug availability, shortages, medication needs, to relaying that between the pharmacists and the physicians, or just knowing, we would just knowing if the physicians are looking for something, we know it's not available, relaying that to our pharmacists. Or if the customers are coming in and we're like, hey, we don't, we have a shortage of this, things are, we can only fill this much here. Relaying that information. So sitting in as that communication bridge is very important. And then maintaining technology and telecommunications. So when systems are down, how do we as technicians continue to operate? And I know that when I've experienced some downtime in the hospital, that's a lot of running around, actually face-to-face talking, but just being a communicator in these extreme situations is very important.
Heatherlyn is so smart. Like she's been to several of our conferences to present, and they're always so interesting. But I love this analogy, right, of technicians being a communication bridge. You just think about all the folks that technicians sit between, where they've got access to information and insight, and just looking at yourself from that different perspective as being the bridge. It was just like a big aha moment for me.
And that happens so much, especially now, I feel like with shortages, where techs are that middle person to relay that to the doctor's office, to relay that to the patient or insurance company or wherever. They're the ones that have to communicate that and get that message across. And so I think it was just important how she was saying, being proactive about that, how important that is. If we already know that something's going to be out of stock, relaying that to whoever, to the patient, or relaying that to a doctor's office prior to, so things can be done, like we were talking about, that preparedness aspect of things, not just what to do in the emergency, but even preparing for something beforehand.
Let's go into the next one. Our next session was with Dr. Amanda DiMarzo. She's fantastic. She did a presentation called Putting Patients First: Resources for Medication Accessibility and Affordability. As always, super impactful presentation. It was focused on all the various barriers that patients face when they're trying to access their medication, from affordability to transportation issues to lack of reliable information. She really emphasized the crucial role that technicians can play, once again, bridging these gaps. Let's take a listen.
But you can give your patients resources to help them get there. So the key takeaways are patients face significant barriers, ultimately affordability, financing, literacy, transportation costs, work costs, missing work. Pharmacy technicians are key. You guys are really talking to patients every day in their day-to-day, and it really can help you, help them for you to explain some of these things that are happening, and give them some resources so when they leave the pharmacy, they're not just going to find things or misinformation on the internet alone. You can give them reputable sources. And then education improves access. So should someone need more information, you can point them to the right resources to learn a little bit more so that they can approach it with a better understanding so that they don't get into the situation again.
I always love Amanda's presentations. She always does an amazing job. This one really stood out to me just because of just previous work that I did as patient advocate. And one thing she said that stood out to me was one patient barrier that they have is literacy. Mm-hmm. And that's so true. There's no one really in between to give the patients that education to help them understand what's even going on, and that's so important. Like she was talking about with the resources and things like that. It's so important for them to have that and not just have it, but understand what their resources are and what their options are.
Yeah, it was a great session. I would certainly recommend to people listening out there right now, if you're not connected with Dr. DiMarzo on LinkedIn, she's a tremendous resource. Like she stays up to date and connected with all the different accessibility resources, tools, programs like that. So if you're not already connected, be sure and look to connect with Dr. Amanda DiMarzo on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. So next we have the incredible session entitled Navigating USP Compliance, and that was with Dr. Fred Masumi. Dr. Masumi is one of the leading experts on this topic, and in this session, he really emphasized the importance of safety when dealing with hazardous drugs. His message was super clear about protecting ourselves is just as important as protecting our patients.
To manage these policies and how to do it appropriately for hazardous drugs. And so if I can impart one thing that you learned from me today, it is that you never, ever want to handle any of these hazardous drugs with your bare hands at any point. So when you're opening up the tote, getting it from the wholesaler or from the manufacturer, you never, ever want to touch the package or the vial itself with your bare hands. There have been 15 studies that have been done that have shown that the packaging of these particular drugs have residues of the drugs they hold on the outside packages and the package inserts.
Yeah, I was so excited to have Fred with us this year. This was his first time speaking at our conference, and he is known internationally as a leading authority on these topics. And so we were so glad to have him there. Just like great insights, thinking about things that maybe everyone's not always thinking about.
More than 1,400 pharmacy technicians have now advanced their careers with BPTS, the Board of Pharmacy Technicians Specialties, an independent initiative of the National Pharmacy Technician Association, with 15 specialized credentials and certificates available, including board certifications in sterile compounding, hazardous compounding, non-sterile compounding, and the CPhT Advanced Certification. The opportunities for growth are endless. Now it's your turn. BPTS is dedicated to advancing 1,000 more pharmacy technician careers this year. And with our unmatched commitment to affordability and accessibility, investing in your future has never been easier. At BPTS, we believe you should be earning more, not paying more. Visit bpts.org today and take your career to the next level.
Yeah, I know that was something that wasn't really emphasized, I don't think, in my training, but that is a really good point about the unpacking. When you're unpacking the drugs and things, you want to make sure you're not having any, your bare hands because of that, the residue from the drugs. And like he brought out, 15 studies have shown that on the packaging, there is residue from these very hazardous drugs. So that was a very, very great highlight, great point, to just be aware in how emphasizing the patient care starts with us taking care of ourselves, and we're able to help the patients as much as possible.
Absolutely. The next session we had was from Ariel Lewis. She did a session titled Maximizing Efficiency, Strategies for Multitasking and Prioritizing in the Pharmacy. She brought some fantastic tips and strategies just about like staying organized in the fast-paced environments of pharmacy. One of her main points was all about the power of setting clear, achievable goals. Let's take a listen.
A SMART goal, I read that statistics say that if an employee has an actual goal, if this goal is in line that they want to achieve, they're actually willing to do them and accomplish them if there's actually a goal that's set. So set clear goals, guys, in the pharmacy. If you're a lead tech, or even if you're just, a regular tech, just set goals and have everything in line, step by step. You don't want to be in a pharmacy and you're just clueless. You don't know what's going on. Everything is just chaotic. So just have everything organized, set some SMART goals, and then, keep track of the tasks that are being completed as they go once you set these SMART goals.
I didn't get to hear Ariel's, but I was super excited about her presenting. Especially about this topic, because especially, I would say, in any pharmacy, but I feel like especially in retail, those SMART goals are so important for the lead to put in place maybe, but also for techs that want to get in those leadership positions, having those SMART goals that are realistic, are measurable. That's so important.
Yeah, no, she did a fantastic job. It was her first time at CPhT Live, and she just delivered a great session. These are the kind of topics that I love being able to provide for our attendees and members. You don't see a whole lot of training and educational content on these soft skills that are critical in pharmacy, like prioritization and just multitasking, efficiency. It was a great session. We were really, really delighted to have her.
Yes. And while you were moderating that session, I was actually with Dr. Marissa Mauricio, and she was presenting on mastering GLP-1RA therapy, key insights for pharmacy technicians. And this was such an informative session, especially with the rising popularity in these medications for both diabetes and weight loss. She really did a fantastic job of breaking down the differences between the different GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and some of the others. So let's listen.
For pharmacy technicians on the call, but maybe you might be familiar with this one. So type 2 diabetes, semaglutide would be Ozempic, which is the injectable, or Rybelsus, which is the oral tablet. Weight loss is going to be called Wegovy. And as you can see here, the pens are very different, which is different from the Saxenda, which they look kind of similar, right? With Wegovy, it's an auto-injector, kind of like what we talked about with Trulicity earlier, but this one has a little bit different. It's made by a different manufacturer, so you really have to be mindful and understand what those differences are there, and the pharmacist typically will go over that with the patient so they understand how to inject it.
I was so glad that she was able to participate. She did a live webinar for us earlier this year, and did a fantastic job. This is, one of the hottest topics going on in pharmacy right now. And she has really positioned herself as an expert in this area. So I love that she was able to really break down all of these medications by their therapeutic indication and really provide some clarity about this class of drugs.
I agree. She does a really great job at explaining this from the pharmacy and pharmacy tech perspective, and how techs can actually help I feel like there is this thing with diabetes meds anyway in pharmacy. It's always been kind of like this thing where we know a little bit, but not really. And I just feel like because they are so popular now in weight loss, it's almost like a reintroduction for techs into these drugs and how they work and how even things as far as how they're dosed and things like that. So I feel like with her presentation about it, she does a very great job of breaking that down and explaining that.
Our next session was Pharmacy Informatics, Enhancing Efficiency and Care, presented by Nicole Barnes. Another fantastic session, especially for those interested, in how technology and data are involved in shaping the future of pharmacy practice. She did a great job explaining the role of informatics and how it's all about using data to ultimately drive better decisions and improve patient care.
Of the medications that have different components that are brought into them. All of these things, pharmacy informatics and interoperability, which is a big word you hear now, especially as we're trying to bridge the gap between data deficiencies, between sharing of systems. So it's one of the things that pharmacy informatics is really working towards. So there is such an importance of data and technology as we are going through all of this. So data and technology is the world that we live in. All of these things, everything that we are doing is driving towards data-driven information, data-driven insight. Any PI, performance improvement, or medication improvement process, it's all data-driven. And so the more data you have, it's complex data that everything is looking at. And so the ability to bring that and be able to take actionable insights from that data is very important. And pharmacy informatics really takes all of that data and breaks it down to a more granular level so that our leaders and leadership within our organizations, within our health systems, within our retail pharmacies are able to use that data to make changes in the organizations.
This was my first time speaking with Nicole Barnes and hearing her present, but this topic has always been a little unfamiliar with me, but she did an amazing job explaining that gap and that need for pharmacy technicians in that field and why those numbers and why that data is so important. I think she did an amazing job explaining that and explaining how that data, how it can really help organizations, big or small, make different changes within the pharmacy.
Yeah, she's spoken for us at the conference several times in the past, a lot like Heatherwood, just super smart in this area of pharmacy informatics, really a subject matter expert with that. And, it's an area that a lot of our attendees are really interested in because it's one of the key areas that technicians can really advance in within health systems is in that informatics role. So we were excited to have her back again this year.
Yes. And then we had Dr. Jordan Spillane's presentation titled From Customer to Patient Elevating Care in Pharmacy. And this session was all about shifting the focus from transactional interactions to providing genuine patient-centered care. Jordan shared some fantastic insights on building a strong team culture, and she offered one piece of advice from a mentor that really stood out.
And have hired many individuals. And about a decade ago, I was told by a mentor, hire for attitude, train for skill. And what he meant by that was it is much easier to train an individual after you hire them on certain skills that they need to be excellent at their job. It is much harder to change someone's attitude, their personality, their disposition.
Yeah, I didn't get to sit in on this session because I was moderating the other one, but that's actually the exact same mindset that I use in our organization when we're looking to make hires. The skills can be taught, skills can be learned, but those core character traits that directly impact the culture of the organization and as you would refer to it, Ashleigh, as the overall vibes.
Exactly.
You can't train that. So totally back this piece of advice?
Yes, you know how I feel about vibes, and we all know you cannot teach vibes.
No.
You either got them or you don't. And I love just her presentation and how she really stressed that you do have to have certain skills. It's not just about, and like we talked about before, it's not just about those physical skills. It's about the soft skills. It's about the things you can't really teach, but have to be more so developed, but they have to kind of be there initially. I think she did an amazing job with that. And we finished that day out with a session that had everyone buzzing, which was Revolutionizing Pharmacy, the Future of AI and Digital Health. And that was presented by Dr. Timothy Onks. Dr. Onks' session was both thought-provoking and a bit of a wake-up call for all of us in the pharmacy field. He dove into how artificial intelligence is starting to reshape our industry, and he shared some insightful thoughts on what this evolution means for pharmacy technicians.
You're going to give healthcare and deliver it. The business of pharmacy is going to be always constantly evolving. It's an evolving workplace, but it's also going to be dealing with the fact that I think the expectations of our patients and the consumer mentality is going to drive us to do different things, that the operational aspects of pharmacy will see AI come in just like any other workforce and any other industry as well. And I think that you as pharmacy technicians will be caught up in it, and for good things and for bad things. The bad things will be the worry, the concern, the how do I keep up with this? The exciting things will be like, hey, I don't have to do X anymore, or I didn't like doing this, or I can do this. And I think that's going to be the part that really drives us. Is it's exciting and it's scary. The scary is how much could it hurt us? The exciting thing is what can we do next? And I think that's one thing I'll hold on to, is that I would encourage is thinking to yourself, like, what comes next? What can we do? How can this evolve us at the end of the day?
So again, we had another industry leader on a super hot topic. I mean, if you look at just across the board right now, right? AI is everywhere, everything, but lots of unknowns. What I love about Dr. Onks is, just really presenting pros and the cons, not trying to sugarcoat anything, not trying to advocate, necessarily one way or the other, but just really presenting the reality of the opportunities and the potential challenges, both with AI in pharmacy and digital health overall.
Yeah, he asked the questions that we're all wondering, how could this hurt us? He asked, what can we do and how this can evolve us? And I think that's the big question techs are wondering, because the initial perspective is thinking, this is robot is going to take over, it's going to be no need for us. But I think the exciting and more positive perspective is, how will this evolve me in my role? What am I going to now learn to do that's actually going to take me up a notch and actually level me up into a different career, into another field? I think having that perspective and him sharing that is super encouraging and really gives techs and pharmacists something to think about as far as the future of pharmacy.
Absolutely. So on our final day, we started things off with a session from Dr. Jerika Dodd titled Guiding Growth, Two Sides of Mentorship and Coaching. This was, of course, it's Dr. Dodd, right? So it was a super engaging discussion.
Yeah.
She talked about the impact of mentorship and coaching on career development. And, Dr. Dodd coached me in the past. So this was a very direct connection for me, but she did an amazing job just covering the different types of coaching relationships, whether you've had a positive experience or new to it, or, only have had just informal guidance in the past. Let's take a listen.
This presentation or this discussion is for all of you, because maybe you had a coaching relationship and it went wonderfully, and this will be confirmation. Maybe you've never had one, and this will give you some things to expect. Maybe you've had an informal relationship, but we will talk about maybe some of the formalities of coaching.
What I really liked about this presentation was her describing the difference between what coaching and mentoring is. And so she was saying how it could be a more informal relationship when it comes to the mentorship. And then with coaching, it could be something more formal. In a lot of different situations or circumstances, people do pay for a coach versus someone that is in a mentorship. And I like how she really explained the difference in those and what people could be looking for or what they might be needing.
She did a great job as always. And, there are those differences, right, between mentorship and coaching. And I thought she did a great job of kind of laying those out for all the attendees.
Yes. And then we saved the best for last, right?
Well, we I don't know if it's the best, but it was the last.
Definitely the best. Don't do that. But we had from Mr. Mike Johnston, we had Level Up, How to Elevate Your Skills and Impact in Pharmacy. And I have to say, this session was extremely motivating. You brought so much energy. You gave the audience so much advice on how to really take charge of their careers, especially when it comes to advocating for yourself. And I know that's something we talk about a lot.
If you don't have a career champion, if you don't have a sponsor or an advocate, become your own. You want to write that down. If you don't have a career champion, become your own. This is not a time. If you really want to level up, we're not sitting back. We're not waiting for other people to take charge in this situation. This is your career. This is your life. Dan said it Friday night, and I loved it. Advocate for yourself. Yes, advocate for our profession. Yes, advocate for our field. But first and foremost, advocate for yourself.
So I will admit, it never doesn't feel weird listening to yourself or clips from yourself. But I was so excited to give this presentation. I presented for the first time ever the Career Catalyst Framework. It's genuinely the culmination of 25 years of work into a process and framework that can be taught and replicated. So I'm actually really excited to present it again. Twice. I'm gonna present it twice on Monday, November 25th. So if you're interested in hearing the full presentation, in its entirety with me live and completely free, it's not going to be CE credit since you weren't at the event. But if you want to watch the entire session and learn about the Career Catalyst Framework, just go to cpht.org/level up. That's all spelled out, no hyphens or anything, just cpht.org/level up. And you can register to join me on November 25th.
I love that. I think my favorite part of this is simply you saying advocate for yourself. We talk about that a lot. We talk about it a lot in our podcast with our career journey episodes. And the one thing that sticks out with everyone that makes those big career moves or gets into those great positions, they advocated for themselves. They took it upon themselves to realize what they needed to do, where they wanted to be, and they came up with an actionable plan. And you have to, in this field, I feel like to stand out, to level up, you have to advocate for yourself. No one's going to do it. It's no one else's job. You have to do it for yourself.
And we've got a really cool way now to teach people how they can do that. So super exciting.
Yes.
Well, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you found it both informative and inspiring. For links, show notes, and resources from today's episode, visit cpht.org, click on the resources tab, and then click on podcast. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. So send us your feedback, questions, stories, or show ideas to podcast@cpht.org. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week for another great episode. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of CPhT Connect. Be sure to subscribe and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. For additional resources, show notes, or to connect with this week's guest, go to cphtconnect.com. And finally, we'd love to hear from you directly. Your feedback, suggestions, questions, or stories. So drop us a note at podcast@cphtconnect.com.